Okay, what we see in the background here is Sandy Hollow. This is a national battlefield site. It's a protected area. Also, this was the third line of the Pennsylvania Continentals, the Virginia Continentals, and Washington probably himself was here. In the middle of this field, as you look down, there's a line. Now there's a cannon there also. That cannon marks the spot where the third line would have been during September 11th, 1777. Now that house in the distance wouldn't be there. Neither would some of these woods be here. This would be farmland. So if there's a line out in the distance, you can see that there's a clear line of fire. Now during this time, Nathaniel Greene was stationed at Chadds Ford. He was held in reserve. Now he came up, he heard firing, and he was ordered by Washington to come to this aid, come to the aid of the Continentals who were retreating to the third line. Now this was late in the day. This was probably around 6 o'clock. Now it started to get a little bit dark outside. So basically the Continentals, they didn't like to fight at night. So they were still in that line. A little information, the Marquis de Lafayette was 19 years old during this engagement. It was his first engagement during the war. He was an aide to Washington. He was the best friend of Washington for years. He was wounded at the Battle of Brandywine, right there out in that field. They think that he was right where the house was. Now what happens when a commander or a high-ranking officer gets shot in the field, as he has a sash around him. It's a red sash. Usually there's 2 or 3 of them. Now what they do with those sashes is when Lafayette was trailing the troops, these troops were scared. They had 2 lines. They got the British advancing on them. Basically, they thought to themselves, let's just get out of here. Lafayette gets off his horse in the middle of that field out in the distance and stops, puts a saber out and says, halt. He halts the troops, and by that time, Nathaniel Greene is about a quarter of a mile away with reinforcements from about 1,000 Pennsylvanians. So basically, during the engagement, Lafayette gets shot in the leg. Now he doesn't go down. They took him off the field. They took his sashes. They wrapped his sashes and they carried him to a house about a half a mile up here, a farm, where they took care of Lafayette. Now when Nathaniel Greene came, there was another 1,000 more troops in this general area. Now this is called Sandy Hollow, and as I was saying, right behind that house is called Bloody Lane. Now as they were retreating, the British really were coming at the Americans. They were coming at them, they were pushing them into this field. But they held their ground because they had reinforcements. But during this engagement, it was starting to get a little bit late. So basically they held this line in the distance for probably about an hour, 15 minutes to an hour. They're speculating about an hour they held this line. Now, as you see in the distance, there's a road out there. That's not the original road. The road would have been almost in the middle of this field. So basically, the center of the line would have been right in the middle of this field. Now during this time, Washington knew that the battle was happening. He had reports that in this area, that they were coming in this area. He himself rode up here. Now he didn't know how to get here. The problem about this area Washington didn't know about was that the Quaker roads were small and he didn't really know the area very well. But he wanted to be here. He wanted to see this battle because the Chadds Ford battle was just beginning and over. They had pushed them out of Chadds Ford. The advancing Chadds Fords were now going to Dilworthtown, and then also here the battle was still raging. So what Washington did was he went and he got a Quaker local, and he forced him at Sabre Point to take him here as fast as he can. Washington got on his horse with his aides de camp, rode up here in 45 minutes through woods that are completely wooded. Now you see roads and trees and easy access here. Back then, you couldn't do that. You couldn't get through these woods very fast. You had to jump over obstacles. There were fences everywhere. So basically, Washington arrives here late in the day. And during that time, Nathaniel Greene meets up with Washington at Dilworthtown. Now the problem with this is that the British, about 7,000 British, are now advancing on this area. And basically, our lines just retreat. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to pan over to where our lines retreated to.